more Code Geass discussions with Deru and the kittens. So this question is asked by Pratik, which asks, could you summarize the UFN plan of Lelouch? And yeah, it is probably one of his most underrated feats. Like, when it comes to his planning, it is zero Requiem levels of scaling, at least to some extent. Not narratively, but in methodology, it's certainly up there. So the UFN plan starts at the beginning of R2, right after Lelouch regains his memories with the kiss with C2. And ask about that feat, and I will talk about it because this memory sort seen by Lelouch is exceptional when it comes to cognitive scaling. But continuing on with the plan, it begins with the Babel Tower strategy, where he's fighting the current viceroy of Area 11, and he essentially uses a diversion to bring all of the soldiers fighting in the tower to the top in order to detonate explosives along the bottom of the building, leading it to collapse. However, one specific order that he gives is the location of them to be on one side of the building predominantly, so it falls towards the Chinese embassy, which means that he was able to memorize the length of the building and the building's base to the Chinese embassy. And the reason he did that there is so that they can escape into Chinese Federation territory, primarily for safety, but also to begin the enactment of the UFN plan by using Geass on the embassy member, which I don't remember the name of, with his Geass in order to begin alliances with them. But obviously, Jinkei realizes that this embassy runner is going against the will of the Chinese Federation, and so there is a mini coup, to say, like a precursor to the one in the Chinese Federation arc. And obviously after this, he has a pre-recorded message that he puts into the mask of Zero, who C2's wearing the costume of, and makes that declaration of his return to basically the entire world. And this is to essentially reinvigorate hope in the Japanese people, which obviously is only good for raising his influence in his return. And the next aspect obviously comes with the Maul escape plan and the Black Knight's rescue, which is obviously to recuperate the forces that he'd lost when Guilford uses them in order to lure Zero out and defeat him in combat and imprison him. Obviously, the Maul escape plan was used to divert those that were surveying him and also lure out Rolo into following him, anticipating that he wouldn't completely fall for the misdirection, and then sets up, he essentially uses himself as a suicide kind of bomber in order to protect Rolo. God, you really want that, don't you? Yeah, they broke it. Look at this. And obviously he uses all of this in order to, as I said, save the Black Knights and recuperate his forces and his influence over Japan. But obviously he now has to adapt. He uses Detard and Sayako to begin negotiations with the Chinese Federation to sort out the Iceberg ship, which can be used to give them free transport into the Chinese Federation, where he's already starting these negotiations in order to take Horai Island as Black Knight's territory. And obviously this would all go smoothly until Schneisel, it was Schneisel or Charles, but somebody, God, it's embarrassing that I don't know this off the top of my head, but they end up placing Nunnally as the viceroy of Area 11. And this is done in order to essentially, Suzaku, he uses that as the trap to try and see if Lelouch's memories are still sealed, or if he's regained them, which obviously he has. And really good in theory for the feat, but really poor execution, but we're not talking about that. And what this does is that, obviously, with Nunley wanting to restart the Special Administrative Zone, Lelouch obviously has to adapt, and this comes in the form of the 1 million miracle strategy, where he uses a multi-layered logical manipulation of the Britannian legal system and the vagueness of his identity as zero in order to move 1 million people onto the iceberg ship that he pre-arranged with the Chinese Federation to then escape Area 11 to Horai Island. And that's 1 million miracles, and we move on to the Chinese Federation infiltration arc, which is the next step in his overall plan, with this one being to gain the cooperation of the Chinese Federation through marriage in order to use their global influence to essentially begin gathering allies for the United Federation of Nations against Britannia. And this starts with the marriage war arc, where obviously Lelouch wants to have a member of the Black Knights marry the Empress of the Chinese Federation, Tiangzi, in order to achieve this goal. But obviously Schneisel had deduced all of this as soon as the 1 million miracle strategy ended, and used it to essentially prevent Lelouch's entire scheme. And obviously Lelouch then adapts again and attends the ceremony before the wedding, challenges Schneisel to the chess match with Suzaku on the line, so he can get him out there, use Gias on everyone, and essentially just have a mass exploitation in order to guarantee his plan going forward. But obviously with Nina interrupting the chess match, we never see that occur, and Lelouch is, in essence, forced to retreat with the volatile Nina on the scene, and is prevented from joining the wedding itself. But obviously he goes anyway and kidnaps Tiangzi in attempts to use her friendship with Kaguya in order to negotiate her to join the plan for the UFN, which is initially a failure due to Tiangzi's lack of logical insight, safe to say. Obviously, Jinkei, who had organised a coup around the same time, is then set free and given the Shenhu, a brilliant learning ability feat to be able to pilot it. I can talk about that if anybody wants, just drop the recommendation. And he initiates the irrigation trap strategy, anticipating all of Lelouch's moves, down to even his pre-prep, and also predicting the very changes in nature itself, in order to trap Lelouch's forces, forcing them to further retreat into the Mausoleum of 88 Emperors, where, upon bombardment, he then uses the Shinkiro as kind of just a power play and as an extra layer of protection. And obviously in the heat of battle, Tiangzi goes out to try to demand the fight to stop. Jinkei goes to save her, and he uses it to essentially save Jinkei as a form of alliance proposal. And then he uses this kind of stalemate that they're at to then have negotiations with the high eunuchs, the people that run Japan, behind Tiangzi's back. And he anticipates all of their kind of derogatory behaviour and discriminating words towards their own people in favour of Britannian noblemanship, which Schneisel promised. And he just broadcasts that to the entirety of China and causes pretty much an entire nationwide rebellion of billions of people with that recording, predicting actually that Schneisel would then secede support of the high eunuchs and essentially just leave them to fight for themselves. Jinkei then slays them. Tiangzi takes full power with Jinkei as her right hand, and he gains most of their support with a little bit of resistance from some factions, but they soon secede. Some fall to Britannia, but this is yet again another step in forming the UFN. He also does the Gias Hunt, which is another subsidiary of the UFN plan, but again, not talking about that, and ironically it's a very bad anti-feat for later series Lelouch. And then, obviously going on later, he gets the support of other nations, even like Europe and Africa, and he's eventually able to form the UFN. And all of this, from the very beginning in Babel Tower, was to create this anti-Britannian resistance, which then led to the Liberation mini-arc, where he got brutally outsmarted by Schneissel's Black Knight betrayal plan. And that's essentially an in-depth look at the UFN formation plan for Lelouch. A very high-tier plan, very great in terms of like strategical complexity and overall like preparation, adaptability, even foresight to some extent. But again, like, it's mostly brilliant for its preparations, intricacies, and adaptability. And I highly recommend it to use for your Lelouch scaling. Feel free to drop more requests in the comments on my Discord. You can DM me or do it in the new channel that I have on the Discord server. And yeah, I'll see you then.